Hello and welcome to Chapter 6, Traffic Laws. This also coincides with the book. If you are going to, if you have a copy of the book that we are sending out, then you can also read the chapter on traffic laws and follow along. We're going to start along with our chapter pre-quiz as we have with all the other units, starting out with question number 1 in drivers entering a roundabout. A, have the right-of-way over other vehicles in the roundabout. B, must yield the right-of-way to already within the roundabout. C, must yield the right-of-way to any vehicle entering to the right. D, must come to a complete stop before entering the roundabout. And again, remember, we're going to send out an email. We're going to ask that you put the answers together and that you'll send them back via email once complete with this unit. So again, you're going to answer this question and have it prepared for the end of the unit to return it in an email. Question number 2, BAC, stands for breath alcohol content, breath alcohol concentration, blood alcohol content, blood alcohol concentration. Question 3, if two drivers are crossing paths, arrive at a four-way stop sign at the same intersection, who should yield to who? A, the driver on the left should yield to the driver on the right. B, the driver on the right should yield to the driver on the left. C, the driver stops farther back should yield to the driver who stops closer to the intersection. Or D, the driver of the smaller vehicle should yield to the driver of the larger vehicle. 4, following another driver too closely or tailgating is considered A, aggressive driving, B, road rage, C, a speed management error, or D, distracted driving. Number 5, a driver's license, A, is owned by the state, B, can be revoked for dangerous driving, C, can be suspended for traffic offenses, or D, all of the above. Okay, and that concludes the questions. Now we're going to move into the information. We're going to start with the introduction to traffic laws. Have you ever been a passenger in a vehicle when its driver received a traffic citation? What happened? And here you can go ahead and write down just a little bit of information if you have. You don't need to give a detailed story, but maybe we could talk about it. Now here, this is going back into the Dutch reach, which we talked about a little bit in an earlier chapter. This is when we look before we exit a vehicle, but also the bicyclist should be looking as well. So we're going to talk about a little bit in this unit how everybody's kind of in charge of what they're looking for and what they're seeing. Starting with the individuals in the car, notice the person in the back is trying to open the car door, and of course it's going to be unsafe with a bicyclist coming. The driver, as you can see, has left their door closed as they took a moment to look and see what was around their car. Again, looking in that donut, if you remember that, in their space cushion. Now, also, we talked about space cushion on the roadway. You can see here that space cushion is pretty important even when we're parked, as this bicyclist does have the right of way. I will ask, and maybe you can answer this question in your answers as well. Have you ever been on a road where you've noticed that there is parking on the right side of the street, a bicycle lane immediately to the left or exactly where this bicyclist is positioned, and then the roadway? Where I live and work, there are many of these roads where a bicyclist does have the legal right of way to drive right where they are. And so to increase safety, we want to make sure we all look. We're going to go back to the READ that we talked about in an earlier unit, and going back to the R, what it stands for in read. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in this next slide here. So read, go back for just a second, and it is right speed for the right now. And what does this mean? I apologize that I jumped back and forth between slides. I realized the last slide or the next slide doesn't exactly talk about what I wanted to just yet. So the R stands for read. We're going to review again. And read starts for right speed, right now. And that means that we're doing the right speed in adverse conditions, right speed in congested areas, right speed in open areas. Reviewing again with the E, that's eyes up, brain on. So again, if we go back to the bicyclist, we would have our eyes up looking around to see before we open the doors, and that would turn our brain on to leave the door closed as the driver did. And then we're going to go on to the A, again reviewing what does the A stand for in READ, and that's anticipate their next move. We want to anticipate their next move because it's going to help us to determine our next move. Now, of course, we can't anticipate what everybody's going to do all of the time, but maybe potentially if they have a turn signal on, we can anticipate they're going to turn. If we see brake lights, maybe we anticipate they're slowing or stopping. There's a lot of information we can gather to anticipate the future. And then going on to D, what does the D stand for in read? That is your huge donut of space. So as I just reviewed in the previous slide and in previous chapters, that is keeping plenty of space around us. So making sure when we open the door, we are safe. When we are driving on the road, we've left enough room for others around us. And so using our read will help increase our safety on the road. Traffic laws and rules of the road. We want to ensure drivers are qualified to operate a motor vehicle, provide rules for highway user behavior, help predict what other highway users will do, serve as guides to law enforcement and courts. So why do traffic laws exist? They exist to support safe and efficient traffic movement, promote orderly flow in the traffic, and hopefully help prevent crashes. Drivers need to know what is expected of them and also be able to expect certain behaviors from other drivers. Why do traffic laws work? They help promote predictability, which lowers risk. When people drive in a lawful, predictable manner and can accurately predict what other drivers will do, risk for all users is reduced. Traffic laws help formalize this predictability and keep all road users accountable. How do traffic laws prevent crashes? Laws prevent crashes by ensuring that drivers are qualified to operate the motor vehicle on public roadways, providing rules for behaviors of the highway users, helping highway users better predict what other drivers will do, serving as guides to enforcement personnel and courts. It's important to obey traffic laws to the greatest extent possible. Negative consequences result when drivers are detected and cited for violating traffic laws. Why do some drivers violate traffic laws, whereas other people drive for many years without a single citation? Some drivers are ignorant of laws. Although ignorance is not an excuse for not obeying laws, some people are selfish and self-centered and perhaps believing they're above the law. Some drivers think they can get away with it. They realize they are not detected and cited by police each time they violate route laws. This reality might lead some drivers to believe they will never be detected and cited, but odds are their time will come. All right, we're going to move our slide over here, and here's a video for us. Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about the driver's license. It says, why do you think the state requires driver's license? Go ahead and give me a 1-sentence or a 2-sentence statement as to why do you think we have to work this hard to get a driver's license? Why is it important to hold a piece of identification that allows us to go down the road? A driver's license, as we heard, gives permission to operate a motor vehicle, provides legal identification, shows the driver has basic knowledge of traffic laws and rules. And who issues the driver's license? The states, typically through an entity such as the Department of Motor Vehicles. Driver license and vehicle law enactment and enforcement are powers reserved for states and U.S. territorial possessions. They are not the purview of federal government, which explains why any vehicle laws can vary by state to state. Again, who owns a driver's license? The state owns it, not the driver. So again, backing up a little bit, just understanding that we are learning Michigan laws when we go through on some of these things. We're learning generalized overall, but occasionally we'll come into Michigan law. If you are out of state of Michigan, you will have to check your Department of Transportation and make sure any detailed information we give on a driver's license is okay by your state. And here, this is just an exercise, so we're going to kind of skip through that. And here, I'm just kind of looking, I'll back up a little bit. So it's going to take a little bit where for you as an individual with a program you're working on right now, you're getting the information to take a test to apply for your license. So this will be a little bit different. You must pass a written test. It's more than likely a computer test nowadays, but you may have to take a written test. But either way, you're going to take a test at the state of Michigan that allows you to show that you have basic knowledge of driving, and that'll be one step in getting your driver's license. You need to pass a vision test. They will likely give you one at the Secretary of State on the day that you take your written test or computerized test to help to ensure that your vision is within safe limits to drive. And then with training, so this part here that you're working on, this is the education piece to address the test. And then there can be a vision test right along with it. And then down the road a little bit, after you've taken some time to work behind the wheel with a driving instructor or a driver therapist, you will gain the skills to do the behind the wheel test, which is what they're talking about here, to obtain a valid license to drive. So we just learned what it takes to get it. What do we want to worry about once we get it? Now, of course, for you, this is going to take a little bit. There's some classroom education, some training information and stuff like that. So can a license be taken away after it's granted? Yes, the license can be taken away if the driver commits an offense. The state can either suspend a license or revoke a license. And what is the difference between the license being suspended and the license being revoked? So suspension is a temporary removal of a license, typically for less than a year. Revoke is where they will take it away for a longer period of time or permanently. And this, again, a review revocation is the loss of the driving privilege completely, typically for at least 1 year, and you must reapply. So you essentially have to go through a classroom program and stuff and readdress it. Many people depend on their vehicles for everyday activities such as work and school, so a license suspension or revocation is a significant penalty and inconvenience. Driving while a license is suspended or revoked is a serious offense. Conviction for driving while a license is suspended or revoked is typically a misdemeanor that can result in fines and other penalties. So putting it quite simply is we're just making sure that you understand we're going to learn all the rules and regulations in this classroom material. You'll further learn rules and regulations as you drive down and practice on the road in real time. But that's why we learn those rules and regulations, is that we don't want to get our license taken away. We don't want to get fines. We don't want to have fees. So we want to do everything correctly, following the rules and laws and road activities And so we don't have any issues. So this here is just something to take into note and not necessarily something to really worry about as long as you're going to follow the rules and regulations of the roadway. So we're going to talk about auto insurance and other financial responsibilities. Now, as a new driver, potentially you're still working under your parents or under a family member. So we're going to keep this very general as to this area here. Starting with, states do require all drivers to be financially responsible. And what does that mean? And what you ask? They must have the ability to pay for damages resulting from a crash, regardless of who is at fault. Not everybody has enough cash to cover the full expenses that could be involved in a crash. Medical expenses for anyone injured, property damage, or other expenses. Having automobile insurance policy is one acceptable way to meet this requirement. Insurance can also cover damage to the vehicles. What is the proof? So possess automobile liability insurance coverage, deposit money in the amount required to the state, deposit bonds or other securities sufficient to meet the state requirements. Now, this stuff is all getting very detailed, and this is all stuff that could be talked about with your family or parents, who's ever helping you to obtain a car and work through driving. So I'm just going to keep it in general. We just want you to know that there should be insurance on a vehicle, and it's to help insure those in the car, with the car, and around the car. We do need to have proof of it in the car. So if we do get pulled over, we want to make sure that we are able to show proof that we have insurance. If we don't have insurance on the car, that could come back to lead to that revocation or suspension of a license. So it's an important piece. I'm just not going to dive too deeply into details of it at this point in time. And again, coming into insurance liability and such like that, that'll be something that will have your parents or individuals who helping you drive go with details. Okay, and insuring high-risk drivers, again, this is something to be talked about with a family member. Vehicle ownership and registration. So what does it mean to have a vehicle registered? So in this state, we'll go with the state of Michigan on this. Other states may vary, but we'll keep to one that we're familiar with. A vehicle must be registered with the state. It must have proof of insurance, may be required. The owner pays a registration fees and receives a license plate and a registration card. This title document shows the owner name, vehicle body style, vehicle ID. This is how to prove you have ownership. So this is a certificate of title. So this is when somebody owns a vehicle, they're going to get this to show that they have that ownership. Describes the vehicle so they know it pertains to the vehicle, and has some serial numbers and such like that. Now, this might be something you're not even in charge of. Maybe your parents have completed this already, but as adults, I thought it'd be an important part to put in here as you may purchase your first car in the future. So just giving a little tidbit of information we may need to have is a little helpful. And again, we want a registration. In Michigan, we'll say it's mandatory liability insurance laws. Name the insurance company that insures the driver, and at the time of registration, the owner receives a license plate and a registration card. You'll keep this registration in the car, and again, going back to if you were pulled over for misfollowing legal laws and rules, they would ask for this registration information to show if this car is legally registered in the state of Michigan. So that's why we reviewed it here. Again, all pertinent details as to what does a title do, what is a registration really for. I'm going to ask that you leave that up to your parents or an adult in charge or around who can answer those questions with more certainty for you and your certain needs. We're going to move through first here to rules of the road. I want you to think of a location or situation where you've seen one driver motion to another driver to move or go first. Describe specifically what happened or what happens generally in this situation. So what I'm asking on this question here is, have you ever been at an intersection and watch a driver across the intersection wave a car on and say, come on, come across by using their hands maybe flashing their lights and asking you to go ahead and come across. What we're going to learn in this unit is this might not be a safe situation, and we might be relying on others for different purposes. So I'm going to ask here if you ever have, you can give a short, detailed couple sentence explanation if you have. If you have not, we can talk about this maybe in a future time frame here. So what kinds of rules are included in each state's, motor vehicle code? So Michigan has a motor vehicle code that has basically a collaboration of all of our laws together. And so we know what we can do and where. The laws in this code that we're talking about regulate driving speed, lane usage, passing and turning, signaling intentions when a driver is preparing to stop or change direction, driver's responsibilities in a crash, aggressive driving, distractions, driving under the influence of alcohol or other drugs, and the right-of-way laws. These rules are in effect, whether or not signs or signals or markings are posted. What is the right-of-way? Right-of-way laws identify which driver should proceed first when more than one driver approaches an intersection at approximately the same time. What is due care? All drivers are required to exercise due care to avoid crashing. When two or more drivers approach the right-of-way situation, they all should be prepared to yield. And here we're going to play a video.
There are
Okay, so we're going to move to prevent traffic conflicts. The first principle is related to the purpose of right-of-way laws. What is the purpose of these laws? Their purpose is to prevent conflict caused by one driver failing to yield to another driver. Right-of-way laws have already worked out who should yield to who before those drivers ever even approach each other. The rules are already there. You just need to know them and stick to them to be a good driver. Principle number 2. This is the right-of-way is never taken. It is either given or not by one roadway user or another. Right-of-way identifies who must yield the right-of-way. Never assume that another driver will yield the right-of-way, even if you should. Humans make mistakes and may not yield at all. Always pay careful attention to others' drivers' inattentions and actions and respond appropriately. The third principle is that to be granted the right-of-way, a driver must be driving in a lawful manner. For example, if you are speeding, another's driver's responsibility is to yield the right-of-way to you goes away. However, though there may be no legal requirement to yield to a driver engaging in an illegal driving maneuver, all drivers have the responsibility to yield right-of-way in order to prevent collision. The fourth principle of right-of-way states that a driver has not yielded the right-of-way if he or she forces other road users to change their speed, direction, and/or position. That is, if you cause another driver to have to brake or steer, you actually have not yielded the right-of-way to them. Any maneuvering would need to be on your part, not theirs, for the law to see you as having yielded the right-of-way. And the final principle, the fifth principle requires that regardless of which driver should yield, whoever has the last clear chance to avoid a collision is obligated to do so. That is, if you are able to avoid a crash by maneuvering and you do not take that action to prevent the crash, you are viewed as having partly caused the crash. Simply because another driver causes a dangerous situation, if you fail to take actions that would prevent a crash, it can be ruled as also being your fault as well as that is the other driver. So take your time if you have a chance and review these 5 principles as they are strong and good information on the right-of-way. Here, we're going to take a look at some scenarios. An unmarked or open intersection, both cars arrive at the same time at roads crossing each other. Who should yield to who? The gold car should yield to the green car. Okay, and the reason is this car came here first, and this car is still coming up second. All right. Oh, excuse me, both cars came up at the same time. The gold car should yield to the green car as it's to the right of this car. So as you can see, it's to the right here. I apologize for miscomprehending the information at the first point. Here, the gold car is going to yield to the green car because essentially the green car is not changing his lane here. 2 roads are coming together, but this individual actually has to cross over. Oops, we're going to go back. I apologize. I bumped a button there. This car has to cross over when essentially this car is maintaining their lane here. So here we have a situation where this lane goes away. And so this car should have gotten clear information a while back. There should have been a sign way back in the distance here that says lane ending, please merge left. Because this car failed to process the information ahead of time, they now have ran out of roadway, thus leaving this car the right of way first, and they must merge in behind this vehicle at this point in time. Okay, so blue truck yields the right of way, and you can see they're stopped. Next one here, we have a 2-way traffic with a northbound lane partially blocked by a truck. Who yields to who? So we can see here the truck was not able to get all the way off the side of the road. This individual here is behind this individual. Now, they do have the ... dots, which you may think, oh, he is able to pass. However, the rules state he's able to pass if there's enough room to do so. So this vehicle here actually has the right of way as their lane is clear, and this car would have to wait to pass when the opportunity is safe to do so. So we'll show here that the blue car yields the right of way. Okay. We have quite a few scenarios here, so we'll go for a little bit. This is two-way traffic. The northbound lane is completely blocked. We have a little barricade there. Who should yield to who? And again, this car has the right of way, even though this is the ... And the solid line, this vehicle does not need to pass, nor would not pass. However, this car, again, back to the rule of pass when you have enough room to return after your pass. So again, it puts the blue car is going to yield the right of way. Here, there's a creepy gray van stopped along the side of the road. The driver wishes to re-enter traffic. Who should yield to who? So what they're saying here is this van has their turn signal on. They don't show it very well. They actually show the brake lights here. They say this van has their turn signal on and would like to come back over. However, this vehicle already is on the roadway and has the right of way. The driver of the red car wishes to turn left onto the main road. Who should yield to who? The red car yields to the blue car and the gray van. We're going to hear the saying left turners turn last, whether we say it in real time in the car behind the wheel, or you hear me say it in future units. We will have left turners turn last. So here, both vehicles would have the right of way. And then when it's clear, that left turner is going to come over, and make their turn. All right, I clicked ahead. We're coming up to the next one. So here we can see the gold car yields to the blue car. Reason for this one is gold car comes up, gold car has stop sign. Stop sign must yield to traffic users on main roadway. Okay, and this individual here is on this roadway and has the right of way because this is the larger road and this is a smaller road considered. So once this car passes, then the gold car can do as they wish. Here, the driver of the blue car wants to turn left and the gray car wants to continue straight. The green car's entry into the intersection is controlled by a stop. We can see this here. The blue car is on and does not have a traffic control. Who should yield to who? So here, again, the green car must yield. This guy does not have to stop. He has the ability to make the turn and come through. Now, as far as positioning point, if that was the case, he should be starting the turn up here. So this picture is just a little bit off, but this car would stop, give this car the right of way, and then they can continue ahead. Okay. This intersection is controlled by a light. Lanes running north and south are controlled by blinking red lights. The east-west lanes are controlled by blinking yellow lights. Who should yield to who? So here we have red traffic lights. This is what they're talking about. These are yellow traffic lights. This individual here must stop because they are at the stop sign. These cars have the right of way. Now they may slow a little bit to make sure traffic is clear, but they do have the right of way. At this four-way crossing, all approaches are controlled by stop signs. The blue car has already entered the intersection. Who should yield to who? The drivers of both the red and green cars should yield to the blue car. So we have him going first. The driver wishes to enter the intersection should yield to the vehicles already in the intersection. So that is going to be that information there. Green and red cars yield to this car here. Okay. Now we're going to put in the same picture. We're just going to move the green car a little bit. At this four-way intersections, the lane running north and south are controlled by yield signs. The east-west lanes do not have traffic controls at this intersection. Who should yield to who? The driver of the green car must yield to the red and blue car as they have the yield sign. Blue and red have the right of way, will continue on. When blue and red are gone and roadway is clear, green will continue where they want it to go. Okay, as the gold car waits at the red light, the red car has a green light and there's a pedestrian in the crosswalk just ahead of the red car. Who should yield to who? Okay, we have red car, green light. Pedestrian always has the right of way. So pedestrian's going to cross first, get across. Now red car may go. Then if gold car's light turns green, gold car can come across. Both the silver and the red cars have left turn arrows, and the silver car has already entered the intersection. However, there is not room in the middle of the intersection for both the silver and the red car to make the left turn at the same time. Who should yield to who? The driver of the red car should yield to the silver car. All right, so here's silver car. Silver car is in intersection going first. Driver then looks like they want to turn left. So they would be able to turn at this point in time. And by then, maybe gold car has a green light and they're able to turn. Okay. Next scenario. Okay. Red car is continuing straight. The driver of the blue car wants to make a right turn on red. And there's a pedestrian in the crosswalk. Who should yield to who? Okay. So here again, pedestrian is going to walk. However, this car here can proceed through. It does not interfere with a pedestrian. They have the green light. They have the right of way. Pedestrian will cross. Then if blue car would like to, because they have their turn signal on, they may then turn right on red. Okay. So here it's first pedestrian crosses. Red car may go simultaneously, and when way is completely clear, blue car may turn right. The red car is continuing straight, and the driver of the blue car is facing the yield sign. They want to turn right on the east-west roadway. Who should yield to who? The driver of the blue car should yield to the red car. The yield sign controlling the blue car's path tells this driver must wait to continue until the way is clear, and moving forward will cause no conflict. So again here, red car is clear to go. Blue car must wait until red car is passed. We have just a couple more here. So who is responsible for safe merging on the freeway? The driver entering the freeway or the vehicle already on the freeway? The driver entering the freeway is responsible for safely merging onto the freeway. Merging involves two or more vehicles coming together or blending to maintain the smooth flow of traffic. On freeways, though the legal responsibility to merge safely rests on the driver, entering the freeway, drivers already on the freeway can help avoid collisions by adjusting their speed and position to allow for smooth conflict-free merging. So as you can see here, this is the acceleration lane, and we'll talk more about expressways in a future unit, but right now we'll just kind of touch on this. First of all, we're coming onto the acceleration lane. We're gaining speed. We've come into our merging area. We are checking traffic. We notice that there is no traffic here in our merging lane, but we need to get right here. Now, potentially, by the time we get down the lane, blue car is not a problem. Red car may be a problem. Red car may try to get over here to the left lane for courtesy to allow us to come in. However, if red car decides they don't want to move over, they do not have to. They can stay here, and green car would merge in behind red car. And again, this is something that's going to be practiced out in the real world behind the wheel. So this is just showing real quick here, and it may be a little complicated or complex. If so, again, it can be shown on further detail behind the wheel. Who should yield in a traffic circle or a roundabout? The driver wanting to enter the circle should yield to the right-of-way of vehicles already in the circle. Now here they don't show any vehicles in the circle, so nobody in the circle has the right-of-way. Drivers within the circle should yield to other vehicles within the circle when they attempt to exit the circle. We'll talk more about roundabout intersections later on in the course. Sorry, that didn't come out very well. So again here, there is nobody in the lane. Oops, let me back up here. I clicked the button. There's nobody in the lane. So this car essentially could come in. So could this car, and so could this car if speeds allow. But ideally, it would be this car coming in, going around where they need to go, then this car coming in, then this car coming in. But again, this will be discussed later on in units and can be seen a little better in real time behind the wheel. How should drivers yield when authorized vehicle emergency approaches? Okay, so here we're talking about our ambulances, fire trucks, police. What do we do? What do we do when we see those lights? So here we've got an emergency vehicle, lights are flashing. Woo woo, woo woo. Sorry, had to. You'll notice both cars are moving over. This is not a lane specific. This is not a side specific. An emergency vehicle is actually trained to come down the middle of the roadway area here to allow them a safe move and maneuver. All right, so we should be pulling over to the side and stopping regardless of what side of the road we're on. Now here, an ambulance will actually come into the open side of the intersection. If you can move over while you're sitting at an intersection, you need to try. However, if it's going to increase danger for you or the emergency vehicle, just stay where you're at. They will maneuver around you and continue on in your path. And again, this will be discussed in later units. What are the rules related to funeral processions? Do not drive between the moving vehicles that are part of a funeral procession. The lead vehicle of the procession is required to obey stop signs and signals when first approaching them. In addition, drivers participating in a funeral procession generally have their headlights on to increase their availability or visibility, of other users. Okay, whether or not pedestrians use cross at crosswalks, drivers must be aware of their pedestrians. Pedestrians crossing the road other than in a crosswalk should yield to any vehicle in the road. Vehicles must yield to blind person with white cane or guide dog, and driver of the vehicle should yield to pedestrian crossing at the road as marked at the crosswalk. All right, so there's a lot going on here. We'll start with the first one. First of all, pedestrians have the right of way no matter what. We don't want to hit them, right? So you can see here, this pedestrian is standing here and they're more than likely going to cross. Hopefully they would do it safely and figure out what they've got to do. But if not, we need to slow and let them cross. Here they have pedestrian crossings. They have the right of way in these crossings. Hopefully they're crossing in those. And then when the way is clear, we are able to proceed. And this is regardless of green light or if we have a green light. Okay, so if a pedestrian's in front of you and the light is green, you must wait for them to clear the intersection, then you can go. Here you can see the pedestrian crosswalk is kind of randomly in the middle of a roadway here. It's important though, it's a pedestrian crosswalk. If a person is in it, we must stop and give right of way. Due to concerns about pedestrian safety, vehicle speeds and noise reduction in many cities have begun to alter some sections of the roadway to address these issues. Referred to as traffic calming, these efforts include such as roundabouts, raised crosswalks, speed tables, and help pedestrians be more visible. Generally, traffic calming systems have been found to increase safety and road capacity and reduce delays that can normally occur with traffic. Some states require drivers to stop for a school bus only when red lights on the bus are flashing outside a business or residential area. In Michigan, we will go into more of these rules more firmly in a little bit in a further unit. But for today, we can see where this bus is stopped, all cars must stop in Michigan. This is only a painted divider, so it's called an undivided highway. So all vehicles must stop. Here, the bus is over here with their lights on. These cars must stop as well. And again, you can see all of these cars are stopped here. So essentially, you can see that in Michigan, we need to stop for the school bus. I'm going to click on these yellow buttons here and see when they've got. When in doubt, slow down when meeting or passing a school bus. Stop if the bus is unloading or loading children, if the red lights are flashing. All right, we're going to skip these scenarios and go to laws governing traffic devices. Okay, so we're going to look at flashing red light, flashing yellow light, steady green light. Are there any circumstances when you are not required to obey a traffic control device? Drivers must obey all traffic control devices unless directed by a police officer or another person of authority. Drivers must also comply with, any lawful order of direction from police officer, firefighter, flagger at a construction maintenance site, uniformed adult school crossing guard invested by the law with the authority to direct, control, and regulate traffic. Green light signals drivers that a vehicular traffic may proceed straight through the light, turn right or left unless a sign prohibits either such turn. Yellow light, a steady yellow light signals to drivers that movements allowed under the immediate preceding green light conditions should be safely completed, and a red light will be illuminated immediately thereafter. A steady yellow light, there we go. I'm just gonna read through this one. A red light, a steady red light signals drivers that vehicular traffic should stop behind a clearly marked crosswalk or near the side of the intersection. If there is no crosswalk, vehicles should stop behind a clearly marked stop line. If there is no stop line, vehicles should stop before entering the intersection and remain stopped until the indication to proceed is shown. What are laws regarding stop signs? Except when directed by a police officer, every driver approaching a stop sign must stop behind the crosswalk, stop line, or near the side of the intersection. Okay, we are going to skip this little activity here. Again, it's another one of those activities that don't work very well. So we're going to come through here and go straight into vehicle operation laws. Going to take just a minute. Okay, if you remember earlier in this chapter, I asked you, have you ever seen the opportunity for a car to be parked on one side of the road, a bicyclist to have the legal law and right of way, and moving traffic? Now you'll see here, this is where we talked about with that driver looking to open his door and how the passenger swung his door open. The bicycle has the legal ability to move here. However, the car must also make due regard to watch where this vehicle is. Essentially, it's a vehicle on this roadway. So here's a little review of the question I asked earlier in the session. Safety belts must be used by the person accompanying any seat in compliance with child passenger safety laws. So in Michigan, we have height laws and we have weight laws and we have size laws. So I encourage you to look those up for Michigan laws if you're going to transport a child in the car. What responsibility do you have when you want to move traffic from a parked position? Never move until you're certain your movement can be made reasonably safe. Emerging from a parked position, here, we could be emerging from a driveway or emerging from a parking lot. When entering roadways and intersections, if you are entering from any place other than another roadway, yield to the right of way of all vehicles. If two vehicles arrive at the same time, the vehicle on the left yields to the vehicle on the right. Let's see, we'll come to the next sign here. What is a reasonable and prudent speed? Speed limits are set based on traffic density, road conditions, site conditions, visual field, and types of vehicles. These limits are called fixed, maximum, or minimum posted speed laws. So here you can see this sign says limited sight distance, 25 miles an hour for the next half mile. Now, yes, we have learned that this is a warning color, all right? However, it's showing you there's a warning, it's a limited sight distance. Recommend the 25 miles an hour for the distance of a half mile. Now, not all signs will give this much information. This one just makes sure that we're safe for the next half mile and that we should maintain a slower speed. Okay. Drivers may not drive faster than the maximum posted speed or slower than the minimum posted speed unless conditions make it dangerous to travel at minimum speed. So when you're out behind the wheel with me, I will, on a sunny day like this, make sure that you're driving the speed limit. We will work very hard there to learn speed control. However, if we encounter a day or an evening like this, I would generally slow down to a specific speed that makes us with increased safety on the roadway. If the speed limit is not posted, identify what type of road you're on, adjust your speed to the prima facie speed limit. To address each state's motor vehicle code, default speed limits, applying different maximum speeds depending on the type of roadway. Known as unposted or prima facie speed limits, these are always hold true even if there's not a speed limit sign posted. Every mile of roadway in every state has a speed limit. Simply because a speed limit sign is not posted does not mean drivers can drive as fast as they wish. In Michigan, in rural roads, we'll have a lot of roadway areas that are not posted, and they are known to be 55. And again, going back to that statement of 55, that is something your behind the wheel instructor will instruct you on and discuss and demonstrate where those may be. Always drive on the right half of the road except when overtaking and passing another vehicle or passing an obstruction. So here we can clearly see the vehicles traveling in this manner are on the wrong side of the road. We should always have the yellow lines on our driver's side, but here we have a hazard in the roadway, so they've been asked to pass on the other side. There's likely something we can't see. There's likely construction markers or construction signs forewarning this information to allow the traffic to safely drive on the opposite side of the road for the distance they're required to drive on the opposite side of the road. If not, these individual cars should be passing at one at a time when conditions are allowing, even though, yes, there is a yellow line. But this is only when a roadway hazard is present that's not moving or able to move out of the way at an exceptional speed. And so we would come around.
As a new driver, you also need to learn about key vehicle operations.
Okay. So emergency vehicle on the right, going back to an emergency vehicle, we can see here the move over law is we want to move over one lane if we can. And here it says reduce your speed limit to at least 20 miles 20 miles per hour below the speed limit. Be sure to warn other drivers behind you of your change of speed. Okay, now in Michigan, it's stated we only need to do 10, but 20 is a good speed as well to slow down and give those emergency responders that extra little bit of safety. If the vehicle is on the left over here, they're just showing that you would move your position still to the center lane, just moving from the left lane to the center lane. All right, so here's just a cute little reminder that perhaps an emergency worker is working next to the vehicle. They might have reflective triangles out, but we want to slow down and give them room. This goes for tow trucks as well, police, ambulance, fire, and tow trucks. So make sure we give them all the room they deserve. What factors should you consider when determining the distance between your vehicle and the vehicle in front of you? Never follow a vehicle closely than is reasonable and safe considering vehicle speed, traffic, and condition of the highway. We'll talk about this much more later on. However, I always like to say we want to have at least a school bus in front of us at all times. 25 miles an hour all the way up to 70 miles an hour, but this will be further defined in an upcoming unit. At what point should you signal your intention to turn? Should be given continuously during at least the last 100 feet of travel by the vehicle before turning. So this could be 5 of these cars lined up. So potentially this vehicle back here has communicated for the same intersection that this car would like to turn. Never want to stop suddenly or slow your vehicle without first communicating your information. People wonder on the straightaway of a roadway while you're all of a sudden slowing down and what you're going to do. So we want to communicate and let them know, hey, I'm going to turn up here. So turn your signal on within 100 feet and tell everybody that important information. Where should you position your vehicle before turning to the right? Begin a right turn as close as possible to the right side of the roadway. So to do our right turn here, we would like to turn right here. And then we'll look at a left turn. So a left turn, we want to position to the center of the roadway here. And we're going to go all the way across lane to lane. I tell my students when we're working behind the wheel to look for the double yellow lines in a large intersection like this. So as you can see, this car here is coming up, preparing to turn left, and they're going to position themselves next to the double yellows. Shared left turns. This is our shared left turn lane. So this car could turn here to the left and this car could turn here. These can be used from up to 200 feet. However, we want to be careful to make sure we're aware of our surroundings as other people can come in from the other side too. A vehicle shall not be driven in the lane except when preparing or for making the U-turn or preparing or making a U-turn unless if otherwise permitted by law. Now I kind of stumbled on that, and we can't make U-turns in Michigan in our left turn lane. They are for left turns only. So I apologize that I stumbled on that. It wasn't coming out correctly, but in Michigan, this is a left turn lane only. So please use it as such. Entering an obstructed area, a driver shall not enter an intersection, marked crosswalk, or railroad crossing unless there is sufficient space on the other side. So what they're showing here is we shouldn't enter the intersection. You can see this truck is stopped right here. This car should not proceed across if they cannot cross without interfering with the pedestrians, and likely they would be in the intersection area. Limited on backing. So you can see here, we shouldn't back unless we can see. If we do back up, we should take it very, very slowly, looking at our surroundings. A lot of individuals want to stare into that rear view backing camera. It should be used to look at and just glance and get some basic information, but we should also be turning our head and looking at all surroundings. This person here, if we're talking about this SUV, might not be in your backup camera. However, we can clearly see by looking out our window, we have found the pedestrian here. So please make sure while you're practicing backing with your instructor or family member that you are looking around in all areas and not just relying on the camera. Going back to the Dutch Reach, we want to talk about that again. So again, if you remember the picture back when I was showing you the car was parked, the bicycle lane was here, and then the travel lane. This individual is in a legal law and lane. So again, this person is in the wrong here and they need to make sure that they're careful and aware of their surroundings. So please be aware of your surroundings while you're out there. And again, this is showing another individual. This is not appropriate. For some reason, he's reading just outside the car in a roadway with a door wide open. So not a very safe thing to do. We're going to talk a little bit about road rage next. Hopefully this isn't something you deal with, but it's something others could deal with. So we want to make sure that you're aware of it here. Reckless driving involves speeding, failure to yield right away, and turning from the wrong lane. So you'll see this out there. Individuals are always taking matters into their own hands. They're driving inappropriately. They're driving too fast. They're driving recklessly down the road. And so this is why we're bringing it to point with you. There are 3 conditions that typically must be shown to uphold reckless driving charge. The driver consciously and intently drove in a dangerous manner. The driver knew or should have known the behavior placed on the persons at an increased risk of harm. The conditions made the increase in risk obvious and serious. So here you could get in a lot of legal trouble if we're looking at reckless driving. Willful and wanton, and the terms willful and wanton are often used in reckless driving charges. What do these mean? These terms imply a purpose or a willingness to commit an act without regard for rights and safeties of others. Both words suggest the driver knew what he or she was doing. Their intent was commit the act, whether or not they had intent or desire to do harm. What constitutes an aggressive driver or road rage charge? So aggressive driving is speeding and tailgating in heavy traffic, cutting into and crossing lanes in traffic, and passing on the shoulder. Now, I won't spend a lot of time here, but I'll tell you that if you're out driving, you'll likely see this stuff. So we like to make you aware of it because when we're out learning how to drive, we're doing all of the rules correctly. And of course, as we're learning, people want to break the rules. It doesn't make sense, but they do. So they become aggressive in their driving nature. So we want to be aware of it and know what to do for it. If somebody is tailgating us, they are on our bumper. They are very close to us, driving very closely in the rear of the car. And we want to kind of watch out for that. So one thing we could do is we could slow down a little bit and allow them to pass us if it's safe to do so. Or maybe we turn off the roadway for a minute and get back onto the roadway when that person has passed if they become dangerous. How is aggressive driving defined? It's behaviors that indicate an aggressive mindset but are not necessarily directed towards any specific driver. We're going to just kind of skip over this on street racing and kind of some more detailed vehicular homicide. That's all stuff that can be discussed in further units and information. Consuming alcohol, that's one thing we don't want to do. I'm not going to stick too long on this one. We should know that we don't want to drink and drive. There's situations that can come through with it. It's illegal, number one. Number two, it could involve others, so we don't want to do that. So I'm just going to kind of skip through this a little bit. We do want to know in Michigan that a BAC of 0.08, a driver can be charged with DUI or DWI. This is important as we may have questions on our test that talk about blood alcohol content and alcohol driving. So I'll go here a little bit and just kind of touch on the next couple of slides. Driving under 21, there's zero tolerance. The laws feature a maximum BAC ranging from 0.00 to 0.02%. They give a 0.02% as it is illegal to have wine at church services. Some medications have some alcohol in it that may count. So in Michigan, if you're under 21, potentially you'll be okay at a 0.02, but you better have a good reason as to why you have it. Otherwise, they're looking at 0.0. Implied consent. All states have implied consent laws. What happens if a driver refuses to submit to a drug or alcohol test? So this is showing a lady has been pulled over for one reason or another, and the officer is potentially suspecting that maybe she's under the influence of alcohol or drugs. They can ask for you to submit a sample of you to get that information from. You can have your license suspended if you don't support it. And they can maybe make you take a class if you don't support it. So in Michigan, we have an implied consent law that if you're behind the wheel and an officer believes that you are under the influence, they can do things to ensure that you are not driving under the influence. And if you were, you could get in legal trouble for it. Drowsy driving can be as dangerous as driving while impaired. So we want to make sure we're not sleepy driving. If you don't get a good night's sleep, maybe you get a ride where you got to go, or you may take a nap and get out there and drive safely. But they say drowsy driving is considered just the same as drunk driving. So we want to make sure that we're safe when we're out there. So we want to talk just a little bit about law enforcement. So law enforcement, we do have police officers, state troopers, sheriff deputies who are on the road to make sure we're safe. So you'll see police cars traveling up and down the road, and what they're watching for is to make sure cars in general are doing what they are supposed to do, responding the way they're supposed to, and that things are proceeding forward as they should. They have cameras. I'm not sure where the cameras are located, but they can also work by cameras. And a national driver register. So they put drivers' names on a register if you've been driving with conditions to where they've been looking at your license or you had your license suspended or revoked. And so they have a registry that they put you on, and they may check for if they pull you over. And again, we're just going to check here a second. And I apologize, my units are slowing down a little bit. And we'll get this one to load here. Looks like the truck's driver is standing on the right front tire. His butt is sticking out in the air. We can see him here. He's leaning under the hood, paying no attention to nearby traffic. So this is a vehicle that is broke down on the side of the road. What happens if he touches something hot or gets shocked by the battery? He might jump back. And so he'd be into traffic. So when you're driving along, you see a vehicle broke down on the side of the road, we'd be watching for people around and maybe move over and give them room or slow down if we had the chance to. And there was a couple more scenarios, however, they wouldn't load. So at this time, we're going to end the chapter. So again, now that we're on the chapter, any notes that you have taken or to any questions, or excuse me, any answers you've given to any questions I've asked, the answers to the questions at the beginning of the chapter. And then also, as the email will state, if there's questions that pertain to this unit that may be in the book that you may have received. We'll work on getting all the answers put together for this and you turning them into me so we can review and ensure that you made good comprehensions of the chapter information. That is it for today's unit.